So yeah, we have a very special guest on the show today, Nadine Artemis. I'm very honored to have you here. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
So I've heard parts of your story before, but I'm curious, like, what's the spark for you that got you into the space in the first place? And what's set you on the trajectory for helping other people the way that you are?
Well, I think there was a few sparks along the way, for sure. Um, Definitely, though, there was some years in teenage life that really resonated with creating the future. Or even as a kid, I was definitely really deeply into nature, always playing around, concocting mud pies and all that kind of stuff. And then as a teen, in the 80s, just classic, lots of hair and makeup stuff. So just in the full, like all the bottles, my bathroom was crazy. I would mix things together. I'd create like new colors of lipsticks. But again, it was all just with these synthetic ingredients and stuff. But then in grade 9, I did get to do a science fair project, which was a rare self-directed learning moment. And I found this book on perfumes. Well, it was actually on cosmetics, and there's a chapter on perfumery that really spoke to me because I had a bunch of perfumes, but I didn't really get where they came from, so to speak, or what was inside them. And it talked about, the distillation in ancient Cyprus and Egypt, and that I just found really fascinating. Also, my great grandfather had gone on some archaeological digs in the late 1800s, and he was mainly an illustrator, but he was also doing some archaeology. Eventually, even with Howard Carter, who found Tutankhamun's tomb, that kind of thing. Anyway, but he would illustrate what he saw. He has drawings of blue lotuses and stuff. So and he was the president of the London Egyptology Society. So I don't know, it's just like ancient Egypt, right? Like Cleopatra. It was very intriguing to me. And that's the book talked about, how perfumes were made. They were distilled plants. This is the art of distillation. And in modern times, these are called essential oils. So, and you could probably find that at your health food store. So we drove to the big city, went to the health food store, and that's where I got my first whiff of things like, orange and jasmine, but natural. And even though I didn't have the vocabulary in that moment to really sort of understand, oh, this is synthetic, this is natural, because again, it was back in the 80s. But it did open up, certainly, like, definitely sparked my olfactory bulb and my brain. And I was really intrigued by essential oils, and I ended up recreating a perfume, Nina Ricci's L'air de Temps, with the essential oils. So that was really cool. And then, skip ahead a few years, I'm at university and really thinking about what I'm eating, really looking at like the labels in the supermarket. What do they mean? Like processed food, like I was starting to understand it all. And just even ingredients that we're ingesting that aren't like real, so to speak. I mean, imagine it's a lot worse now, but like cellulose or, just like what are all those things on the label mean? What are we eating? And
Right.
it just like didn't take much to read all my things, the things in the bathroom, even though I thought it was like clean-ish. Again, this is back in the day, but it was like the Body Shop. And then I realized, oh my God, like it's never, the pineapple face wash, never saw a pineapple, the fuzzy peach bath oil had never been impeached. So I just realized it was just BS and another petroleum promised land. But then it was a real aha moment. More sparks flew. And then I was like, oh my God, like I finally had a real reason to just concoct my own potions and lotions, which I think is all I ever wanted to do since I was a kid anyway. And I just started like making like all that I could, like lip balm, perfumes, lotions. I would put them in recycled film canisters. I was like recycling blue glass bottles for the massage oils. Like it was really cool. And then I was creating things that were sort of more remedy skincare, like things for eczema, psoriasis, varicose veins, acne, and it was really effective. And so that was really exciting. So I'm doing this as I'm finishing my studies and stuff. And then when I graduated, opened up North America's first full concept aromatherapy store. So we had like hundreds of oils, doing custom blends, all my formulas, that kind of thing. So that's what got me into it. And then, that was back in 92. So I've just been like, formulating ever since, discovering more about the body. and just bringing those two worlds together. And I think a lot of what I create in the botanical formulas for skincare, oral care, hair care is for like quote unquote beauty, but also so we can balance. It just feels like, there's a lot of very minor imbalances or like little ailments or things that can come up that aren't like any kind of medical emergency. But, we got to figure out, clean breath, clean teeth, like how do we not have dandruff on our scalp? What if there's rosacea, that kind of stuff. So I feel like that's sort of the nexus where I love to find and create solutions.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a fascinating story. I really like how you got interested in that and just kept expanding. Like you talked about, like we have all these like minor elements that you're speaking of, and we just kind of accept it as normal. We don't really understand there's a better way, right?
Yeah, or we're doing things in the name of modern skincare or modern dentistry that are literally compounding these minor issues that can then grow, or creating them, or kind of putting things in a vicious cycle, like, washing our face with surfactant, synthetic surfactant foaming cleansers that seem fine, or maybe you're a bit dry after, but when we look at that after you've been doing it for a while and under a microscope, and now that we're understanding the microbiome, we can see that those foaming cleansers are leaving like surfactant like splinters in the stratum corneum, the top layer of the skin. So that is, and they're never washed, like it doesn't just rinse away when you rinse your face with water. So we're seeing like these sort of micro details and understanding that a lot of the ways that we're modern caring for our body are not doing us any favors.
Yeah, that makes sense. We're just kind of used to this way of being, but we're essentially stacking the deck against us, and we wonder why we come up with some type of chronic disease later on, right?
Yeah, we want to stack the odds in our favor as much as we can and to the best of our ability every moment of every day.
Absolutely. So you wrote an amazing book on dentistry, and I would definitely like to start on that. So we talk about like the teeth, and we don't really know much about them or how they work. So we talk about something called the dentinal flow. I'm curious what that is.
Yeah, I found that super fascinating. So about 15 years ago, when I was really trying to understand, I'd made some dental products, but then I was really looking to create a daily way that we can care for our teeth and not end up at the dentist, or like not end up there and be surprised. And so I had created this dental serum, which is like a botanical biotic happy gum drops that I'd made like a while ago, maybe 25 years ago now. Just crazy to think.
Yeah.
And that's been revolutionary because it helps to heal gums. It can replace toothpaste. You could add it to a touch of baking soda. So I had a lot of success with the product, but I really wanted to bring it together with research, interview dentists, really figure out what's going on. Again, not from a dental perspective, but as a perspective of like a person that has teeth, which is like everybody else that isn't a dentist, and wanting to keep them. Oh yeah, so I was like, where was I going with that? So in my research, I was really, really fascinated to come across, I like the work of Hal Huggins. He's been teaching us about mercury and filling since the 1960s. And I came across this old vintage book of his, as he has quite a sense of humor, but it's called Why Raise Ugly Kids? And there's there's a chapter on the dental stuff. And in that was fascinating because he met this dentist called Dr. Ralph Steinman, who basically took all of his dentistry knowledge and it washed away like castles on the beach. Because what Dr. Steinem realized is that there is a dentinal fluid, a lymphatic dentinal fluid. So basically a lymph fluid in the teeth, in the dentin. And it is so key to our understanding how to take care of the teeth and how to prevent cavities. Since I wrote my book, Dr. Steinem's work has come out. It's one of those sort of rare, more expensive books. Like it might be about $100, but it is all the tests and stuff that it's called, I think, the dentinal fluid transport, something like that. Not a very exciting title. But Dr. Ralph Steinem and Dr. John Lenora is the endocrinologist that he hooked up with. So in the 50s, Steinem was a dentist, couldn't practice in the August, generally speaking, because he had so many allergies. He just had to close down his practice. And then something informed him to, like, if you just sort of eliminated the white foods like dairy, sugar, flour, it would help. And that did. It cleared up his allergies. So it made him really start to understand that there's a systemic connection between, like, well, like, I mean, we know that now, right? Like, obviously,
Right.
allergies are going to be affected by what you're eating, but it was pretty revolutionary back then. But it was so revolutionary that he decided to close his practice and then really study this. So he went off to Loma Linda University and he set out to practice this, because in the 40s, there was a split in the American Dental Association. It was sort of like they were trying to figure out and make, like, what is their cause of cavity? So, you know, like the theory they could get behind. And in the 40s, there was like, is it systemic? Are the teeth in the mouth connected to the rest of the body? And is that the cause? Well, what won out was the acidogenic theory, which is how we've all been sort of raised, which is just like, you know, brush your teeth, acid and sugar on the teeth creates cavities, period, done, you know, brush your teeth, floss, and go home. So he wanted to know, like, yeah, how are the teeth connected to the rest of the body? So through, you know, thousands of studies and using things like X-ray dye, and in rats, because apparently their teeth are similar to ours. But anyway, so through injecting that X-ray dye, you could follow the track of the journey of the food and what happens. So basically, when we chew, the substrates, the nutrients, are activating the parotid glands, which are kind of like, yeah, on the sides of the jaw. I'm pointing to my cheekbones here. So they're sort of in behind there. And then those signal to the hypothalamus, which then signals to the rest of the body. So as that's going on, of course, we're chewing the food, digesting it, and then the blood is pulling the nutrients. So it takes, interestingly, about, it doesn't take very long for that to happen, you know, and then the nutrients are going to their blood. Then the blood starts to travel back up to the tooth. And the teeth, each tooth is like a tree with roots, and those roots are drawing up nutrients like the tree roots into the tooth or into the trunk. And it's there where this sort of alchemical magic happens. So what's interesting is it only takes a few minutes for that nutritive blood to reach the tooth. But once it's reached the tooth, the process inside the tooth takes a lot longer. It's like an hour. So even though it's like only moving in the tooth, so it's a lot shorter of a journey, but this part takes a lot longer. So the blood becomes fenestrated through the pulp chamber, which is sort of the core, the heart of the tooth. Sorry, heck of a thing. And like the pulp chamber, for example, is what is removed in a root canal. So that's sort of like the juicy part of the tooth. And then, so then the blood turns into this clear lymphatic fluid, and then odontoblasts, which are like, I don't know, think of them as like little bone pistons, and they shoot the fluid. It's sort of the centrifugal, so spiraling, so it spirals into the tooth, it spirals inwards and upwards, and then out onto the tooth surface, where we have this microscopic sweat. This is the dental fluid. It's like a microscopic sweat that then coalesces with the saliva to benefit the mouth and, you know, to go where it's needed. So that is like the ideal situation. You know, that happens with the right nutrients and minerals, et cetera. Now that system, the dentinal fluid transport system, if we're stressed or, you know, all the stresses that can happen in the body for whatever reason, then that system will stagnate. So we're not getting that juicy flow out onto the tooth. If that gets worse, it will, so instead of flowing, it goes to stagnant, and then instead of stagnant, it will actually then reverse if things decline. And then the tooth becomes like a straw that then sucks into the tooth from the mouth. So that rather than the reverse of this fluid coming out of the tooth, then the tooth is like a straw sucking into it.
Okay.
And of course, we've got things in our mouth like bacteria, virus, blah, 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 that goes into the tooth. And that's actually the genesis of how a cavity is formed.
Interesting.
When the dental fluid transport is just, when that system is dysregulated.
Yeah, that's an excellent explanation. A lot of good visuals in there. One thing I gotta mention real quick is you talked about Hal Huggins. I was talking with my biological dentist recently, and he was going on a conventional path. Then he all of a sudden met him like on a train or something, and then Hal Huggins became his mentor. So I thought that was really interesting.
Wow. And that's how he became a good biological dentist,
Correct.
I imagine. That's so cool.
Yeah. Another thing you talked about in there was cavities, because this is like obviously a big thing for people, especially in America. So we know the cause of that. It's not necessarily just the acid that we've been taught for so long, but we also kind of subscribe to this drill, fill, and bill method, right?
Yeah.
In the book, you talk about some other ways that are actually, because the body is designed to heal itself, right? We just kind of have to get out of the way and give it what it needs in most cases. So what are some tactics that you see work for people besides like fillings per se to heal up a cavity?
Yeah, that's a great question. So because like when I was growing up, I didn't even know like you could affect a cavity. It just felt like once the tooth was there, it was like just a stone in your mouth and like not connected to the rest of the body, and it's completely connected in every way. So the first thing is, I think, understanding the dentinal flow, because we weren't born with a toothbrush in our hands. So to me, that is what I like to call the invisible toothbrush. So that's like doing the work. And if that really is working on one level and you've got the right nutrients, you'll want to brush your teeth, but you wouldn't have to per se, because inside it should all be working.
Right.
In theory, but we've got a lot of things not stacked in our favor sort of in modern living. So then it's good to just understand, the teeth are bones, and so they do need what bones need for nutrition. So it's very important to have a base layer of minerals, especially the ionizing, alkalizing minerals like magnesium, calcium, potassium, phosphorus. Those are all very key dental minerals. What's also important is vitamin D3 and K2. So if you're taking a supplement, you want to take them together. And then natural sources of D in food is like liver, cod liver, sardines, I believe. So there's not a lot of food sources. So most people do have to do a supplement of D3 with the K2, because what that does is it's a fat soluble vitamin and it ushers those minerals into the bone. So if you're taking minerals, but then you don't have the D3 K2, then those minerals aren't going into the bone, and the blood will just use it in the meantime.
Makes sense.
So we want to usher that into the bone. So, but what also, we really have a major vitamin D deficit because nobody is going into the sun. So it is important to get your sun in the skin. Get your skin in the sun, because our skin is basically like a sun catcher. There are thousands of vitamin D receptors all over the body, and our skin was designed to engage with the sun.
Thank you.
Period. Now, obviously, we don't want to be out there for 8 hours, and there's a lot to think about that, and we could discuss it for a whole hour, but have written about it. But we do need sun time, but generally speaking, it's not enough. Like, I do get enough in the summer. I track my vitamin D with an app called D-Minder, which takes...
the app is amazing.
Isn't it amazing? So it'll take your longitude, latitude, time of year, how much clothing you got on, your skin type, the weather, blah, blah, blah. So you can really chart your D, which is, it's a living thing in your body. It's not like you take some and then you're done. Like, you have to all the time replenish it. And I do get a lot of sun in the summer, but it's not enough, because then the vitamin D has left our sun as of November the 1st. So I haven't really had sun in a month. And now my D is just like if I wasn't supplementing.
Right.
So, I mean, there's the thing about like, oh yeah, just get 20 minutes in the sun. It's not like get those 20 minutes, and it's better getting 20 minutes than no minutes. But we really, and again, you do want, because it's like a whole different vitamin D is created when the sun touches your skin.
Mm-hmm.
And there's even a few types of vitamin D, if not even in the dozens of the types of beneficial sterols that it creates, like lumisterol. There's a beneficial cholesterol sulfate, all beneficial to the body. So get the sun. But again, we are so depleted in D because we're not eating in our foods and we're not out in the sun at all, generally speaking, as a population. So you got to get that going for your bone health and for the longevity of your bones and your teeth. So that's really key. And then another thing that's really key from the sort of the inside out is really being aware of the anti-nutrients.
Mm-hmm.
So things like phytic acid, oxalates, they are very detrimental to our health. And I bring it up, or especially to our teeth and our bones, because a lot of people that are eating healthy and are just like, they get it and they want to eat better and they're eating more whole foods and vegetables and all that, that's where a lot of the trouble can start, so to speak.
I see that as well. Like they just like grab
Yeah.
quinoa and just eat
Oh,
it out, cook it straight up, right?
yeah.
Like,
So there's like, yeah, if you are doing the grains and beans and things, there is like, you got to soak and I forget what are the
sprout.
stages. Sprout, thanks.
Yeah, soak and sprout.
Yeah, soak and sprout. For sure. But you're still going to get some things, like it doesn't completely remove them all.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so what the anti-nutrients are. So you may think like spinach, you're thinking, oh, Popeye ate it, it's going to be good for me. But you're thinking, oh, great, like I'll make that green smoothie, I'll make that spinach, I'm on my health kick. So it does appear to be healthy, but the anti-nutrients are literally robbing minerals from your bones.
Interesting.
Yeah, especially the oxalates. They can really, even like when you eat spinach and your teeth are fuzzy afterwards, that's the minerals leaving. So the oxalates really change the ionic minerals and they literally start to chelate them out of your bones.
Wow.
Yeah. So sometimes you just got to get off the vegetables, man.
Yeah.
And so it's good, there's a lot of lists on the old internet there.
Yeah.
But there's like, and we also used to eat more seasonally, right? So in the summer, you're eating the berries and collecting them. And then maybe through the winter, you would have a break from eating those oxalates and they would have a chance to leave your body. But especially if you're, anybody can end up eating a lot of oxalates, but especially if vegan or vegetarian, where it's very, a lot of grains and vegetables, you can really start eating way too many oxalates and then you're chelating those minerals out of your body. So you go to a low ox diet, because you can't really go to no, because there's always a little bit in things. But then through that and to clear maybe the decades of oxalates in your body. So phytic acid is one thing, but the oxalates are a little bit, worse, sort of to speak, because they're literally like shards of glass in the body.
Yeah, that's a common explanation I hear too.
Yeah, and so they'll end up, it depends where your Achilles heel is. Is it, are you experiencing arthritis, pain in the joints, eczema, hearing loss? These are all things of oxalate overload in those areas. But what it's mainly doing for everybody is perforating the gut. So that's like one of the major causes of leaky gut. And then even more sort of micro to that, but more major, is it's messing with the mitochondria. And once we've messed with the mitochondria, that's where the game starts to get weird. So that's what's so major. So in some of those diets, like a vegan or vegetarian, like often we think of like, oh, you're not getting maybe B12 or all those things. So yes, there are nutrients that you're not getting, but I think even more dangerous than that is the chelating of these major minerals out of the body. which includes your teeth, obviously, because they're bones. But then and then also the oxalates create a lot more tartar and that kind of stuff, because again, it's messing with the minerals in the bones. So I think that's a pretty key thing to know in the health of our teeth. And also that keeping them white there's brushing helps, but the enamel's actually transparent, like a window.
Wow.
And so it's really reflecting the health of the tooth. It doesn't, again, I think we've got a standard of over bleached sort of blue white teeth. It's like obviously a bit man-made, but gray glassy teeth you may have seen on someone, that's really showing that pulp chamber, that juicy part in the middle, is not getting the nutrients that it needs. So you need all of that to even, to prevent a cavity. Because again, the mineral loss in the bone is going to really, create an environment that makes cavities easy.
Makes sense, yeah. A couple points I want to make there. Back when we talked about how we weren't born with a toothbrush, right?
Yeah.
So we see when we look at like ancient skulls, there's a book called Breath by James Nestor. You probably know of it. There's like all these ancient skulls, like they have all 32 teeth and they're all intact, right? And they didn't have a toothbrush back then. So how did that happen?
No, exactly.
Right? So yeah, that was interesting.
Better diet. Well, that's I didn't know. I had heard of that book, but I didn't know he went into the skulls. But Dr. Weston Price, who you may have heard of, like the Price Foundation, he was a dentist around 1930. He was actually the president of the American Dental Association.
Really?
Yeah, and he traveled around the world with his wife, kind of like Indiana Jones style, kind of checking out like cultures and like, up to the Inuit in the north, or like coastal tribes on the west, and then looking at like Polynesian islands, Peru. They had a lot of skulls there. Church basements in the Alps they would store the skulls of their people. So he was able to look at all these old skulls as well and not see the cavities, see full mouths of teeth. Or even there was a ski town of like Saint Tropez. I think that's a very again, this is in the 30s, and it was more commercial back then than the quieter ski town, and just seeing the difference in the health of the people there. Or he went to the Hebrides, the Scottish Isles, and then looking at twin brothers, one that was on the coast at the port, so the shops and the sugars and the pastries, and then the other brother living, I don't know, deeper in the island, and the natural way of life with the peat roof and everything, and just like full, structured face, full set of teeth. So really being able to see diet being such a major factor. And he had this thing called X factor, which he couldn't figure out what it was that healthy people had in their teeth. But now we're all pretty sure that that's vitamin K2.
Yes.
Which again, like you could, K2 or K, maybe it's K1, but there is K in like leafy greens, vitamin K, but it is not what you need in your bones. That comes from animals that have pastured, so that the chicken that's eaten the grubs and the grass and that lays that egg with a beautiful orange yellow yolk, that's vitamin K.
Correct.
Really deep yellow butters, that's vitamin K rich. So we need that form of vitamin K, and it needs to be with the D.
Makes sense. Because when we see we look at like animal nutrients versus plant nutrients, like there's the most bioavailable form is always going to be in the animal form.
Yeah.
So like K2, vitamin A, like because there's no vitamin A in plants necessarily. It's beta carotene, which gets converted into vitamin A. But the issue is like not all of this gets converted based on your genes or your state of health, right? So
your genes or your leaky gut from the oxalates.
Yeah. So what I was hearing you say with diet overall is like basically, to summarize it, kind of have more of a balance. Like, of course, eat real food and organic, like first principles, of course, but then like just be more mindful of like how you're preparing food in terms of like grains, nuts and seeds, especially because those tend to have more of the anti-nutrients, of course. And then just, of course, have vegetables and fruits, but like just be mindful, like if you're experiencing certain symptoms, just take note, like what is it in your diet, and then maybe, of course, incorporate a lot of Western price foods like organ meats, for example,
Yeah.
eggs. Just have do what you can with where you are in your state of health, and
Yeah.
expand from there.
Yeah, that's always a great way to do it. I feel like, yeah, when you're eating too, like tune in and like to the whole journey of, obviously the beautiful taste and those first moments, which is always fun. And then like, how's it digesting? How do you feel an hour later? How do you feel the next day? And that way you can really chart how do you do, because there's so much diet advice out there and like this and that, but you really have to figure out what's good for you and, start at that basic level. Generally meat is the most sort of non-allergic food out there. So for some people, and it gives you the fat and the protein that you need. So sometimes people kind of take it down to that level, because it can be a wild card with all the basically chemical constituents in fruit and vegetables or nuts and grains. There's more information there. And one thing that I really have come to learn, though, in the past decade is that I think vegetables are a little bit overrated, especially in our modern age where it's, I think even Michael Pollan was like, I can't remember that saying he had, but it was basically like, eat, but mainly plants, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can't remember, but like, actually, I'm not sure now. And I've been through, I've had many years of just eating plants and stuff, but really through being deeply invested in my health and seeing the body and birthing and breastfeeding and really just seeing like we can't sustain ourselves. So that's one part, but then really seeing what these defense chemicals in plants can do to our immune system, and how a lot of them are, if they're containing oxalates or phytic acid, they can be at the root of a lot of autoimmune issues, or certainly not helping,
Yeah, definitely. So if we do happen to come down with the cavity, like
Mm-hmm.
maybe diet isn't necessarily enough for the depth of the cavity or whatever, would there be like certain like mineralization tactics or like ozone therapy that you know of?
Yeah, ozone therapy is great, but really, really bring in those minerals, and then you want to, work with your doctor if you need to. But then you want to like figure out and hide, like a cavity. It's hard to say like I don't know if this is like black and white per se, but especially from the research of Dr. Joel Gould, and then I talk about these doctors in the 1930s that studied vitamin D and the prevention and reversal of cavities. And if a cavity is forming, you can be pretty sure you are depleted in vitamin D. And most people are, because even if you think you've been jogging in the summer and getting it in, it's not enough, and you're not going to store that enough through the winter. Interesting, if people go to the doctor and the dentist like February, March, April, there's more diagnoses of cancer and cavities because we're at this very depleted vitamin D stage. And
Yes.
so, you can inject vitamin D. You can go to a doctor and naturopath for that. You can also do sort of mail order doctoring and get your own kit and do your own injection. It's just intramuscular, because sometimes you have to get that 50,000 IU, bring the body up, and then maintain it with sun and supplements.
Okay.
But definitely, from the work even in the 1930s, it does show that vitamin D at least stops the cavity from progressing, if not reversing it.
Really?
And reversing a cavity, it's not like so when there's a cavity, it's like, kind of brown and it's spongy. So if you had a dental tool, it would be spongy in there. You know what I mean? Kind of like, soft bone. So once it's stopped, the bone will no longer be spongy, but there could just still be a brown mark. But that brown mark will be super strong, be stronger than So it's
Isn't it
repaired itself.
Isn't it more of like a scar that kind of forms after it heals up, kind of like on the skin?
Kind of, yeah. Maybe like a bone scar. But it can be small, or it can not be, or you know what I mean? But at least, like, even if it's in the back molar, you're not necessarily going to see that, but at least if it's arrested, it is stopped. And then it depends how far gone it's, gotten that kind of thing. And then that's
Yeah.
where you do want a really, really good dentist, because you might have to like reverse. Like if you're an adult right now, there's probably some previous dental appointments that you got to clean up. Maybe they use mercury fillings. Maybe they did tooth extractions. You need to check the jawbone under there. So there can be a variety of things. And if it is so far gone, then you do need a filling, and then you want to work with a dentist that's working with biocompatible materials and stuff. But we've had so many emails like from people that have stopped their cavities. So really it is a signal from the body signaling a nutrient deficiency.
Definitely. So is there certain levels you want to see vitamin D at due to its importance?
There is the medical guidelines, which is kind of all we have right now, but it's not even real or correct, because there are other types of sterols in the blood as well. So I think that's another bucket of can of worms or something. But it is good to know. But generally everybody's depleted.
Okay.
What I did with the D app is I just started, rather than from a blood test, I just started from nothing.
Right.
So then I just charted my son and any supplements, and that's what I maintain. I've been using that for like 4 years, and that's my go-to to know how my D is. And I've just been that keeps track of it for me as much as something can.
Okay.
And then if you get to, if we can do it by the sun, then as soon as you got a tan going, you've got the baseline. But then, can you keep it up? I know I can't, because I got 4 months of snow. So, in the summer you might be sufficient, but then you have to amp it up.
Right. If we can quickly go through the dental materials that we definitely don't want to have in our mouths, like a mercury, and then some better alternatives, like ceramic or something.
Yeah. So silver fillings are mercury fillings. They may call them silver fillings, but they're about 50% mercury, and then like silver, copper. It's like a mix of metals. And nickel. So it's like the mercury is one thing, but so are the other minerals. And then anything that also, like, there's when I had braces taken off, they put this like wire behind my front teeth for a few years. I just got that taken out because that's nickel too. Nickel is a very toxic metal. If you're having a tooth extracted, you don't want a titanium post at all. Those are very toxic. If you do need a post, then there are zirconium, and there is ceramic, but I have to check that out more. There are porcelain cavity, what are they called? Crowns and stuff. But which I know a lot, you're like, oh, great, maybe you'll pay more if you can, and it sounds better, but those actually have metal in them as well. So there are things like laser, a lot can be cleaned up with lasers, but not every dentist has lasers. Then there's just, if you have to have a filling, like there is some ceramic, there is BPA-free filling, but plastic is still plastic, and I'm sure we'll find out something else weird about it in 10 years.
Right.
So, but at least it's like probably better than normal guys thing. So those are some of the things you don't want. And you don't want to extract a tooth if you don't have to. So, like 67% of all wisdom teeth extractions didn't have to happen. And we want to,
really
that's
high.
from a dental journal too.
Wow.
Yeah, it's very high. Well, it's sort of this coming of age dental billing moment. Like, great, you're 19, we'll do these 4. But you want those teeth because you may, maybe lose a molar when you're 80, and then you got that other one. So it's just all helping keep, things going in the mouth. And, sometimes they grow in weird and wonky, but sometimes they'll straighten out like later in the 20s. And if it is growing in a bit weird, it doesn't necessarily mean it's an issue. You know what I mean? So sometimes they don't come in right, but it doesn't mean they're going to devastate everything else. Sometimes they are growing in weird and they're puncturing the gum. And so sometimes they do have to go. But you really want to work with a dentist that is minimally invasive and is really thinking about you, and they're, you know, they don't need to look at every dental move as something to bill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, so you definitely, you know, don't just like, okay, he, you know, he said I got to remove my wisdom. Well, hopefully you're working with a dentist that isn't going to make you feel like, hopefully you're really working with one, but like, if don't just take that as something you have to do.
Right.
And then if a tooth needs a root canal, you have to really assess, like, does it actually need one? Because sometimes that can be misdiagnosed as well. And if you do need a root canal, generally the most leading edge aware biological dentists don't do root canals at all. And that is because it seems like a good idea. Like, you could hermetically seal off the tooth by clearing out that pulp chamber. They put like a cement in there, and then it's supposed to sterilize the tooth, and then you get to keep your tooth, which that seems like a good idea because it's your tooth. But then what you have is a dead tooth in the mouth that you think is hermetically sealed, and it isn't. So, because there's meters of like tubes in one tooth, it's quite crazy, like microscopic, of course, and that can never be sterilized. And so then you have this perfect necrotic situation, like this necrotic nest that is building bacteria that is being squeezed into your blood system every time you chew. And it's basically just this festering ground that's harboring bacteria and like making a small death in your mouth. So you don't want the root canal. And one of my favorite dentists, Dr. Nunnally in Texas, he did some independent studies, and they took textbook perfect root canals and removed them and found they all contained severe bacteria that wasn't, you know, and they looked perfect even on an x-ray. They weren't bothering the person, just showing that like it's just not a viable option. Now, if you have a root canal, you may be fine, you know, you could be like constitutionally strong. But if there is anything sort of going on, or, you know, some people have a root canal and then 3 months later things start, you know, to get a bit weird. So then that's when you would want to look at removing the root canal and actually having that tooth extracted, or like don't get the root canal and then have the tooth extracted, because you have to extract at that point. But then you have to make sure that you go to, again, the really good dentist, because in dental school, they leave, when they do an extraction, they leave something called the periodontal ligament in the mouth, which Hal Huggins explained to me that was kind of akin to like leaving the placenta in after giving birth. Like, yes, you don't want it in there. Yeah. And then the gum grows over that, and then it's kind of getting buried in there. And then decades later, once that's investigated, there's often jaw rot, which is called a jaw cavitation, which is a cavity of the jawbone. And then that can be cleared up with ozone and things. And what they have to do for that is they scrape the jawbone, scrape the decay and stuff off. And then that clearing makes blood flow come back to the area, and then a blood clot forms, and then the area starts to heal, and then they flush it out with ozone. And then that, you know, revives that area that can really be challenging an immune system.
Okay.
So that's important. And that can be harboring, you know, wherever there's been an extraction, like a root canal. I mean, sort of like a wisdom tooth. I had known about this for a while, and then I was like, one day I have to have that checked, you know, so it took a moment to get, but I waited to get to Dr. Nunnally in Texas. And, you know, lo and behold, there was stuff that, you know, needed to be taken care of. It's pretty much 90% of people, I think there's 89 to 90% of people will have something in their jaw lurking from an extraction.
Yeah.
If it's a few decades later. And this is like the jaw rot doesn't even show up on an x-ray until it's like 70% there. So, you know, a biological dentist that knows what they're doing is able to tell. They have different tools. The tooth's already gone, so you're just really cleaning up that area. So if you do have if you do really need a tooth that seems like it would be a root canal candidate, you do need it removed. If it's a back molar, you're okay. And you can just leave the space and Hal Huggins promised your face isn't going to cave in or anything. Obviously, if it's in the front, you're going to want to, to figure something else out. So that's maybe then when you're going to want that ceramic or zirconium implant or a bridge. But, bridges they have to like cut down tooth on each side to put in the bridge. So that's not always the best thing because you're maybe ruining really good teeth. Or some people put in the temporary, but I feel like if it's in the front, you're going to want to work with a good dentist there. So they found the zirconium they've been using in Europe for about 3 decades for implants, and it's so much more compatible with our immune system. So that's what's important too, right? Because it's like we've really got to consider any time we're bringing in like a foreign object to be implanted in the body, obviously, with things like mercury or a titanium implant.
Definitely.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing you say is like just ask questions. Like don't just leave your health in the hands of your dentist or any doctor per se. It should really be more of a coaching relationship instead of this strange parental relationship that we got.
Yes, totally.
Just ask questions, be informed, and then make the best decision from there, right?
Mm-hmm. I have in my book and an article on our website where it's all questions to ask a prospective dentist. So you can call even whoever's answering the phone. And there's some simple questions that you can really see, like what is the quality of that office? Do they do root canals?
Mm-hmm.
Because the best of the dentists won't.
Correct.
There are still some good dentists that will, but once you really know about the root canal, you just can't. You can't do it anymore, kind of like a mercury filling. If it's a place that's removing mercury fillings and putting them in, don't go there.
Yeah. So last point, just kind of summer up the tooth and all the dentistry type things.
Mm-hmm.
So the anti-nutrients, of course, be careful of with the vegetables. Just ask questions with that if you're experiencing any symptoms. Incorporate more nutrients. Focus on the materials that you do have in your mouth because everything is connected. We don't want to just isolate any part of our body because it does, in fact, affect everything on some type of level. Yeah. And then, of course, work with the proper dentist because, like, the more educated they are, the better they're going to be able to help you, obviously. So.
Yeah, it's a really key. I don't know. I mean, doctors. I mean, there's surgeons, obviously, but like I feel like the family dentist is so much more important even than the doctor because they're literally kind of doing mini surgeries, right?
Yeah.
So you really want the right person. Then once that's all taken care of, you got a really good baseline. And I do on the website and in my books, I have the eight steps for oral care, 8 steps for successful self-dentistry. And that'll really get your mouth in order because wherever it's at, everything in your mouth can improve, right? The health of the bone, the gum tissue, you can get those gum pockets back down around the teeth, getting them less sensitive, saliva alkaline. So wherever your mouth is at, even if you feel discouraged, it can improve with some few simple steps. And getting that oral microbiome back into balance is really good. And those 8 steps really help to get you there. So that's something you can do for like 3 months before a dental appointment, and it will really help your appointment be less.
Definitely. So you have another amazing book called Renegade Beauty. This goes into there's teeth in there as well, but it kind of goes into everything, especially the skin. Mm-hmm. I like to start there. So what are some mistakes that you see generally with people that are like cleansing the skin, perhaps putting some things on there that may not be ideal, that are affecting health outcomes they may not know about?
Well, I think, obviously a lot of beauty products are just awash in chemicals that we don't want to be putting on in or around our body. So there's that, obviously, but that's like, thousands of different ingredients that you just don't even want. But some basic things, like I think is pretty major, and we've sort of revolutionized how people are taking care of their skin through not using soap. So even if it's good soap, you don't want to be soaping your face, and we don't need to be soaping like our whole bodies, just like pits, bits, and like obviously scrub your nails, wash your hands. but we don't need to be like foaming cleansing our skin, especially our face skin. And so we have these beautiful line of Best Skin Evers, which are just so popular because it just works and rejuvenates people's skin. And it may sound scary even if you have acne, but you want to wash with oil, which is really ancient practice of caring for the body, moisturizing and cleansing with oil. It lifts up dirt, it protects the sebum, it protects the microbiome, it protects the lipid barriers, and it cleanses, it removes makeup, everything that you need. So that's a pretty key thing, is to cleanse the skin, especially the face, with oil.
Makes sense. Because what is like washing too much, especially with like the wrong type of soap, what does that do to our skin exactly?
Well, I mean, depending on the chemicals, it can do all kinds of things, like drying out the lipid barrier, affecting the stratum corneum, which is all that thin top layer of skin. But interestingly, now that we're studying the microbiome more and looking at things sort of in a more microscopic level, what they're seeing under the microscope is that the foaming cleansers, synthetics and surfactants actually leave microscopic splinters in the stratum corneum after we've washed our face, even after we've rinsed with water. So you get this daily microscopic buildup of irritants in the pore. And then that's going to throw the whole game off. For some, it may be some weird dry patch. For others, it may be eczema or hyperpigmentation.
Okay, so definitely not overwashing, and we want to use like more natural type things, like you mentioned oils, like probably jojoba oil would be a good one.
Yeah, jojoba is one of my favorites. It's this beautiful desert plant. It's actually liquid wax instead of an oil, but it's like always liquid. So it has an incredible tenacity and like stability because it isn't filled with like volatile omega oils. And it's this desert plant that also, it really is like the closest plant oil that mimics our sebum. So I love jojoba so much, or a beautiful true olive oil, or you could mix them together.
Okay, yeah. So talk about cleansers. So a lot of people are putting on like these synthetic lotions these days. I mean, like a whole plethora of things that they put on their skin, um, in terms of like makeup or something. So, like, what I like to tell people is our skin is kind of like a giant mouth. It doesn't just go into our bodies. Like everything gets absorbed in some way. Some of it ends up being digested. So it's not just about eating real food. It's also about like putting like real things on our bodies as well. So yeah, in terms of quality, just like what should we be looking out for, and how do we know what to buy when it comes to high quality skin products?
Well, yeah, I mean, quality is sort of hard to tell on one level because it could be high quality packaging and it could just look so beautiful and luxurious. Or it could be completely natural on the ingredient level, but then you open it up and it's like rancid because it was just poor quality, but real ingredients. So you want to know it, you want to be able to smell it. You got to be able to kind of just, obviously everything on the back has to read well. The ingredients have to read well. But short of like not that we all have to become like ingredient dictionary people. So you want to make sure that you can read it. Although a lot of plants, obviously we're going to be using the Latin names on the label, which, you may not be able to read those. But if they're weird chemical names, just don't put on your body. If we're brushing our teeth and anointing our skin, just like we're eating. I mean, when I'm eating, I want every morsel to count and be nutritive and not to have like some kind of net negative effect on my body. And the same thing with my skincare, oral care, hair care. I just want everything to, make my cells sing. I don't want to compromise my immune system. And if I'm doing those actions anyway, besides like the moisture of the jojoba or whatever, I want to be feeding my body and immune system awesome ingredients. So when we've got like ingredients like frankincense, so rich in monoterpenes, which are good for the mitochondria, good for the immune system, good for the liver, that's where I think really skincare and body care can really come together. So you're not just looking at the first, obviously getting rid of the chemicals, but then going beyond just some neutrality or just some lame natural thing that's rancid. You want to really be rocking it because, as you said, the skin is like a mouth and it is all going in the body. And why not have it work for you? Like stack the odds in your favor with your body care as well.
Definitely. Like back to the beginning, like we don't understand, like the body's designed to be healthy. Like we're supposed to feel good. And most of us don't really know what that feels like, or at least not in a really, really long time. So it's like all these things, whether it's just keeping like the window open, maybe just using natural lighting, like all these things, like that's what holistic really means. We kind of need to get back to that, every way that we can,
Yeah, totally.
So where were we just at? Where we were talking about the
skincare.
The skincare.
Yeah.
So sorry, my dog's barking.
Oh, that's okay. I think I gotta turn this off. I just gotta. Hope you don't mind if I turn these off.
You're good.
Because it's dark here now.
Yeah.
So my eyes. We just have red light on at night.
Interestingly, I use a software on my laptop right now called Iris.
Oh, yeah.
And so you're totally red on my screen right now.
That's perfect. I do that on my phone at night too. There's a shortcut you set up, and then you hit the sidebar 3 times, and your screen's totally red.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So let's just get back to where we were. So we're talking about skin health. Is there anything that you would like to summarize for the people to look out for in terms of what they're putting on their skin, in terms of like kind of thinking more holistically about what they put on their bodies and perhaps how they can affect change with that?
Yeah, well, it can be pretty, depending on the state of your bathroom, it can seem like a pretty big undertaking. And again, there are thousands of ingredients that I could just list them off and it'd be like, no, 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 no. So the main thing to know is the things I've said about like really knowing where it's coming from, what is it, and then simplifying it. Like when I was talking about the best skin evers that we've made to wash the face, well, you can oil your hair, you can put it on your body after the bath, you can use it as a massage oil, you can massage your baby with it. So on one level, we've also been simplifying products to sort of make more all-in-ones. So things can get simplified, you can see what you need, but also it's like whatever year we're in now, 2023, whatever this is, there are so many amazing options. It's not just like, oh, now the party's over.
Right.
We make, beautiful pigments for like blushes and mineral balms that can add color. And last year we came out with a beautiful mascara. It's in a glass tube. So, you can definitely have fun. You can still glam it up. And celebrate, because hopefully you're going to be feeling better and better.
Right.
But the skincare thing, it should be fun, and it is a moment of self-care. So let's actually use things that are really going to count and not be, again, a net negative on our body or something that we're like compensating for. There's so much out there that's anti-aging and it isn't like,
Right.
it just is not. Or people be like, what's your best anti-aging serum? I'm like, they're all working towards that as best as anything on the planet can, because we're using ingredients that will rejuvenate the cells, that will organize cellular pathways, that will work beneficially on the lymph nodes, that will work on the immune system, help the airways. Like, just there's so many benefits.
Exactly. Like,
yeah.
I'm sure you know this as well, but like beauty is essentially really a reflection of how healthy we are. right?
Yeah, that's, I think,
So,
yeah, health and beauty to me are inextricably bound. And it does seem like sort of the modern American woman, so to speak, and what that modern, like the sort of whatever society is saying what we need to be beautiful, all the whatever those products and blah, blah, blah. To me, it's just like literally not healthy. So I just feel like it may be like plumping something on your face right now or plumping your lip, but it's like, down the road, not benefiting you and your beauty in any way.
of course,
Also, yeah,
go ahead.
I was just going to say also when we're thinking about, reviving ourselves, as our human bodies and spirits often need a place or a place, a sensation, a something to revive our spirit and our bodies. And it does not going to come necessarily from another supplement or another bottle of anything. But I, in Renegade Beauty, I talk about, really for the foundation of all that is to engage with the elements. I think of it
Yes.
as a kind of a cosmoetic, where we're engaging with the elements of the cosmos to revive our being. So water, drinking good water, bathing in good water. Hopefully you got some kind of filter if it's municipal tap water. Hopefully we can get into like a lake, an ocean, a river once in a while. Air, getting out there in the fresh air, opening up your windows, sitting naked in a chair in the window, or like, I mean, not in the window, but with them open in the winter again, if you have that kind of privacy. So
Yeah.
you're air bathing, you're walking in the forest, you're getting that like fresh air. Then we've got earth. So walking on the earth barefoot whenever you can, lying on the earth, just celebrating all the beautiful non-oxalate foods you can be eating from the earth, the botanical skincare, and then of course the sun.
Yes.
We have been we've been taught to fear the sun in the name of beauty and apparently anti-aging, and yet our avoidance of the sun is aging us.
Yeah, it's crazy.
We really need to keep those D levels up, as we've discussed. And there's so many juicy biochemical actions that happen. And I don't just mean the sun and for tanning, but like the sun in the morning and getting that red light. The red light's always there. It's sort of like the base color ray. And the violet is like the top ray, which is why some people don't get it sometimes, like in the winter here, because we don't get that full spectrum. But like, for example, morning light or morning red light generates a cellular melatonin melatonin in the mitochondria. So it's like a cellular melatonin in the daytime. So
Yeah.
like upon our waking is what's helping us create our sleep cycles. There is the release of melatonin in the pineal gland at night, but that's just like about 5% of the story. Our cells, our mitochondria need the infrared and red light of the sun to get our juices going, to get the
Definitely.
mitochondria going. So we've got to get in touch with those elements. We just can't forget that part. And I feel like now, if obviously for thousands of years there was a struggle with the elements as we, brave the elements for shelter and all that kind of stuff. But now we, we have shelter, we have running water, so we can engage the elements, I think, from a more luxurious level, but we have to remember to bring them back in our lives and not just like shelter ourselves from them completely.
Definitely. Getting back to nature. I mean, that's where it all starts really, because we are nature. We kind of forget,
We are.
So,
We are
all right.
stardust. We are golden. We got to get ourselves back
Absolutely.
to the garden.
Yes. All right, Nadine, this has been absolutely amazing. I know people are going to get a lot of value out of this. There's so many gems in there. So I'm curious if people want to know more about you, some books that you wrote, website, like anything, how can they get in touch with you?
Well, our main portal is livinglibations.com. We've got articles there, past interviews, the books are there. And of course, email us any of your questions, health, beauty, oral, sun care. We have good answers. And if we don't, we will hopefully send you some resources. And then the books are also available on Amazon, Audible. They're both in Audible format, and all the regular social media channels.
Awesome. Yeah, I definitely recommend it. I use it myself. It's awesome stuff. Like, you want to get clean stuff, everything we talked about, they definitely know how to do it there. So, all right, Nadine, thank you again. Great talking to you.
Thank you, Anthony. Take care.